The last train home. Emily sighed as she stepped onto the nearly empty platform, the cold night air biting at her skin. It had been a long day at work, filled with endless meetings and a mountain of paperwork. All she wanted was to get home, curl up with a good book, and forget about the stresses of the day. The dim lights of the station flickered above her, casting eerie shadows on the ground. As the train pulled in, it let out a low, mournful whistle, and Emily stepped inside. The interior was old and worn, with faded upholstery and the faint smell of mildew. She found a seat by the window and settled in, grateful for the brief moment of solitude. The doors slid shut, and with a jolt, the train lurched forward into the darkness. As the train rattled through the dark tunnels, Emily glanced around at the other passengers. They all seemed strange, lost in their own worlds, their eyes vacant, staring straight ahead, as if they weren't really there. She felt an unsettling chill creep up her spine. It was as if she had stepped into a realm where time had no meaning, and the people around her were mere shadows. One by one, she watched in disbelief as passengers began to vanish. A woman in a red coat, sitting across the aisle, simply blinked out of existence, leaving her seat empty. A man with a briefcase suddenly looked to the side, and then poof, he was gone, as if he'd never been there at all. Emily's heart raced, and panic surged within her. She shifted in her seat, her breath quickening as she realized that she was now utterly alone in the carriage. Where did they go? She whispered to herself, glancing around in a futile search for answers. The train continued to rumble through the dark, the flickering lights overhead casting ominous shadows. Suddenly, the conductor appeared at the end of the carriage. He was tall and thin, dressed in an old-fashioned uniform that seemed to belong to another time. A sinister smile crept across his face as he approached Emily, his eyes glinting in the dim light. "Good evening," he said, his voice smooth but laced with something unsettling. "I hope you're enjoying the ride." Emily narrowed her eyes. "Where is everyone? What's happening?" The conductor chuckled softly, a sound that sent ice through her veins. "They've simply reached their destinations. Dear lady, you, however, have a long way to go." "What do you mean?" Emily's voice trembled, a knot of dread tightening in her stomach. "The train is bound for a very special place, a realm where lost souls linger," he said, leaning closer. His breath smelled of decay, and she fought the urge to recoil. "You see, once you board this train, you can never truly leave unless you unravel the mystery of its journey." Emily's heart raced as the realization hit her. This wasn't just a train. It was a trap. "I don't want to go there," she exclaimed, scrambling to her feet. "Let me off." The conductor's smile widened, showing teeth that seemed too sharp. "I'm afraid that's not how it works. The train doesn't stop until it reaches its destination. But don't worry. You have time to figure it out. After all, many have tried and failed before you." Desperation clawed at her throat. "What do I need to do?" The conductor straightened, his expression turning serious. "You must confront the fears that brought you here. Think of your regrets, your sorrows. Only by facing them can you hope to escape." As he spoke, the train began to slow, the lights flickering ominously. Emily felt the weight of her past crashing down on her. Memories flooding back, her father's sudden death, the friends she'd lost touch with, the dreams she'd abandoned. Each regret felt like a chain binding her to the train, pulling her deeper into despair. With a sudden, the last train to nowhere, it was a bitterly cold night when Emily boarded the last train home from the city. The platform was nearly empty, save for a few stragglers hurrying to catch their rides. As she stepped onto the worn, creaking steps of the train, a chill ran down her spine, and she couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. The carriage was almost entirely vacant, with only a handful of passengers scattered throughout the seats. Emily made her way to an empty row and settled in, trying to ignore the unease that had settled in the pit of her stomach. As the train lurched forward, she glanced around, observing the other travelers. Their faces were eerily blank, their eyes fixed straight ahead, as if they were in a trance. Emily felt a prickle of unease as she watched one passenger after another simply vanish, their seats left empty in their wake. Panic began to rise within her, and she gripped the armrests, her knuckles turning white. Just then, the conductor appeared, his tall, lanky frame casting a long shadow over Emily. A sinister grin spread across his face as he leaned in, his voice a low, haunting whisper. "Welcome to the last train to nowhere, my dear, where the lost and the forgotten go to spend eternity." Emily's heart pounded in her chest as she realized the horrifying truth. This was no ordinary train. It was a conduit to a realm where the souls of the dead lingered, trapped in an endless, dark journey. She had to find a way off before it was too late. Desperately, she searched for a way to escape, but the doors were sealed and the windows were barred. The train hurtled through the darkness, the eerie silence broken only by the rhythmic clacking of the wheels against the tracks. Emily could feel the weight of the lost souls pressing in around her, their voices a whispered chorus of anguish and despair. As the train approached its final destination, Emily knew she had to act. With trembling hands, she rifled through her bag, searching for anything that could help her. Her fingers closed around a small, metal object, her car keys. With a surge of determination, she jammed the keys into the window, shattering the glass. The train lurched and screeched to a halt, the conductor's enraged howls echoing through the carriage. Emily didn't hesitate, scrambling through the broken window and tumbling onto the tracks. She ran, her lungs burning, the icy wind biting at her skin, until she could no longer hear the train's haunting whistle. Collapsing to her knees, Emily gasped for breath, her heart pounding in her ears. She had escaped the train to nowhere, but she knew the ordeal was far from over. The lost souls would not let her go so easily, and she would have to face the darkness that had nearly claimed her. As she picked herself up and trudged through the snow, Emily vowed to uncover the truth behind the cursed train, to find a way to free the trapped souls and put an end to their eternal torment. The journey ahead would be perilous, but she refused to be just another lost soul, destined to ride the train to nowhere for eternity.